obstinate and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. Purport. The mind is so strong and obstinate that it sometimes overcomes the intelligence, although the mind is supposed to be subservient to the intelligence. For a man in the practical world who has to fight so many opposing elements, it is certainly very difficult to control the mind. Artificially, one may establish a mental equilibrium toward both friend and enemy, but ultimately no worldly man can do so, for this is more difficult than controlling the raging wind. In the Vedic literature, Kathopanishad 1.3.3-4, it is said, Atmanam ratinam vidhi shariram ratamevacha buddhim tu sharatim vidhi mana pragrahamevacha indriyani hayanahur vishayams teshu gocharan atmendriya mano yuktam bhokte chahur manishinaha. The individual is the passenger in the car of the material body, and intelligence is the driver. Mind is the driving instrument, and the senses are the horses. The self is thus the enjoyer or sufferer in the association of the mind and senses. So it is understood by great thinkers. Intelligence is supposed to direct the mind, but the mind is so strong and obstinate that it often overcomes even one's own intelligence, as an acute infection may surpass the efficacy of medicine. Such a strong mind is supposed to be controlled by the practice of yoga. But such practice is never practical for a worldly person like Arjuna. And what can we say of modern man? The simile used here is appropriate. One cannot capture the blowing wind, and it is even more difficult to capture the turbulent mind. The easiest way to control the mind, as suggested by Lord Chaitanya, is chanting Hare Krishna, the great mantra for deliverance, in all humility. The method prescribed is Savai Mana Krishna Padada Vindayo. One must engage one's mind fully in Krishna. Only then will there remain no other engagements to agitate the mind. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tathati Shapatantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Jata Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sadivam Shadvaitam Shavadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Shahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kopatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhya Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Let's do a mobile check. All mobiles can go to silent mode, please. And what's our schedule? Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadridham tasyaham nigraham manye vayor eva sudushkuram. We'll at once recognize the truth of what Arjuna says here. Everyone who has a mind has experience of how turbulent, obstinate, crazy, uncooperative, and bothersome, troublesome the mind can often be. Chanchala means fickle, sometimes going here, sometimes going there, sometimes this way, that way. Chanchal. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati. Pramati means agitating. Agitating. The mind disturbs. The mind disturbs. One can't be peaceful because the mind is disturbing. Elsewhere it's said that the mind, not in Shastra, maybe it's Shakespeare, or I think Shakespeare, that the mind can make heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. Is it Blake? I thought it might have been Blake. There's similar things in Shakespeare and Hamlet. For me, Denmark is hell. There's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. That's what I was thinking from Shakespeare. And Blake is yes, hell of heaven and heaven of hell. We're in a very beautiful place. Everything's quiet, calm, and peaceful, but we have to live with the mind, and the mind makes everything agitating. And it's not an easy problem because balavad, the mind is very strong. Bala means power. So balavad, it has a lot of power. Balavad and dridham, it doesn't give up. Persistent. Yes, persistent. Obstinate. Balavad dridham. And we're urged to control the mind. Nigraha. But Arjuna says that controlling the mind seems to me like as difficult as controlling the wind. There's a hurricane and you put up your hand, stop. What's the use? Dushkara means not only difficult, sudushkara, exceedingly difficult. So Krishna has explained to Arjuna the yoga system, how one has to sit, how one has to practice breathing exercises and control of the senses, control of the mind, and in this way become fixed in samadhi, fixed in concentration on the Supreme. And this is Arjuna's response, that it seems to me impossible. It seems to me impossible. You've explained this nice yoga system. Samyena Madhusudana, Yoyam Yogas Tvaya Prokta, Samyena Madhusudana. Etasyaham Napashyami literally means I don't see it. You're saying that this is going to work, but etasya aham na pashyami, very literally, I don't see it. You say it'll work, but I don't see it. Why? Chanchalat tvat stitam stiram. because the mind is so restless. You'll sit for meditation and the mind will not be peaceful. So that's the objection. And we have our experience that the mind is being accurately described here. The mind is so troublesome. Even when we try to control it. So Krishna will answer, asamshayam mahabaho mano durnigraham chalam. Asamshayam, undoubtedly. You're right. Asamshaya, no doubt about it. The mind is durnigraha. Durnigraha, very difficult to control. And chalam, it's always moving, flickering. Asamshayam mahabaho, you're right. Mano durnigraham chalam. Abhyasena tu kaunteya. Vairagena chagriyate. But it can be controlled. Abhyasena. By practice. And Srila Prabhupada very pointedly says in his translation, by suitable practice. By suitable practice. The problem with the yoga system earlier described is that it's unsuitable for a person like Arjuna. He's a Kshatriya, he's a military man, and how is he going to go sit like a sadhu and do meditation in a sacred place, sitting on a deer skin and all of that? It's not going to work because the practice is not suitable. It's not suitable for Arjuna, and by extension we can understand it's not suitable for any of us. We're going to sit in the middle of Pune with the traffic going on in every direction, and we're going to concentrate our mind in the yoga system. It's a joke. Or in the West, they have yoga classes, and the boys and the girls sit in a gymnasium or something, dressed in their shorts, and practice yoga. That doesn't work either. So there has to be suitable practice. That practice is unsuitable. It was suitable in Satya Yuga, when the mind was much more placid. Everyone was in the Sattva Gun, the mode of goodness, where the mind actually is, relatively speaking, calm and peaceful. Everyone was like that. They could meditate for 100,000 years. They actually did it. But now in Kali Yuga, our life is, if we live to be 100 years, people are very impressed. Oh, you're 100 years old. Of course, and oh, you're 100 years old. What? What? So very few people live even that long. And the mind in Kali Yuga is disturbed. Alpayusha Shabya. What is that? Prayan Alpayusha Shabya Kalavasmin Yuge Jana Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Upajutaha. In Kali Yuga, people we have a very short lifetime, and manda, we're lazy about spiritual realization. We'd like something that we can do 10 minutes a day and that's it. Or we're not interested at all. We'd rather sit and watch television than do anything for spiritual advancement. Manda, slow, like those who know Ayurveda, if the liver isn't working very well, that's called mandagni. The fire is pretty slow. It's not going. Mandagni. So manda, slow for spiritual realization. And manda sumanda mateo. And if anyone is interested, then there are so many cheaters to mislead him. And mandabhagya. Therefore people in this age are mostly unfortunate. Mandabhagya. And upadrutaha. Always disturbed. And we see how people are, just walk on the street, you see how people are always disturbed, always in anxiety, always so many things. Upadrutaha. So, with this atmosphere of Kali Yuga, the iron age of quarrel, what will we do to control the mind? This yoga system, Ashtanga yoga system, will not work. But suitable practice has to be there. Abhyasa yoga yuktena, cetasa nanyagamina. By suitable practice, the mind can become fixed so that it doesn't wander here and there. Paramam purusham divyam yati partana chintayam. In that, by suitable practice, one can always think of Krishna, and then one can go to Krishna. Abhyasena tu kontiya, and vairagena, by detachment also. Detachment is required. Vairagya. If we're leading a life of attachment, material attachment, then it will be difficult to fix the mind. The mind will be fixed on what I'm attached to. My car, my wife, my house, my money, my this, my that, my VCR, my so many things. So if I'm increasing my attachments, it will be more difficult to practice. Vairagena, by detachment. Detachment means detachment from material things, and also detachment from the false idea. The basic premise of detachment is understanding that I'm not this body. If I think that I'm this body, then I'll think that everything in relationship to this body is mine. This is my house, this is my wife, this is my children, this is my money, this is my this is my that, this is my country, these are my people, this is my... and I'll think of things for the comfort of this body, how to make the body more comfortable, how to make it more this, more that. That will be my life. So vairagena, one has to understand I'm not this body. So the things pertaining to this body are not going to satisfy me. Why should I dedicate myself to meeting the demands of the body, which are met by the animals anyway? The cats and dogs are also meeting the demands of the body. Why, as a human being, should I spend my energy just for meeting the bodily demands? So one becomes, by spiritual understanding the difference between matter and spirit, one becomes detached from these material things. And why should I dedicate myself to these things, which come and go anyway? I worked so hard for something, and then it's gone anyway. It doesn't give the satisfaction that it was advertised as giving. And finally it's lost. And then my life is also finally lost. And what have I gotten? So vairagyena, sense of detachment, will help us. And sense of detachment also knowing that I'm not this body, and I'm not the doer of activities. It's not that whatever I set out to do, I can do by my own power. Finally, we propose to do something, we try to do something, but finally the result is up to Krishna. It's not within our hand. We may try and be very qualified, and everything is totally in our favor, and it fails. You have hardly any disease, you have a very good doctor, and you die. Or you have very serious disease, no suitable doctor, and you live. The ship has a very good captain and the water is calm, but it sinks. Or there's no suitable captain, the water is totally turbulent, and the ship gets through. So it's not within our hands that we can do whatever we set out to. Finally, we have to know that it's up to Krishna. If he desires, the result will be there. If he doesn't desire, the result will not be what we expected. And therefore my business is not to dedicate myself to improving my situation in this material world. It's to reviving my eternal relationship with Krishna, serving Krishna, and going back to Krishna. In this way one becomes detached from the material world. What is there to be attached to? It's not what it's made out to be, and I can't keep it. So the detachment is required, and practice is required, suitable practice. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has suggested that for this age the suitable practice is the chanting of the holy name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam. Kalo nastyeva katirannita. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't invent this. It's there in the Upanishads, that this chanting of the holy name is the only suitable means. Hare Nama, just like we say, do this, emphasis. So Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama. Eva is still, again, emphatic. Definitely. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva, Kevalam, only. Hard to imagine how you'd make a verse more emphatic. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva, Kevalam, only, exclusively. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama. Kalo, in the Kali Yuga, Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva. Eva, na asti. There's no other way, there's no other way, there's no other way. Gatiranyata, no other way. So, if we have some question, what is the means of practice in Kali Yuga? This statement makes it very clear. The means is Harinam. The chanting of the holy. Why? This silent meditation will be very difficult. We'll meditate silently and the mind will silently wander in every direction. But when we chant the holy name and fix the mind on that sound, then the sound will govern the mind. The sound itself will govern the mind. We don't have to think of something, we don't have to picture something or remember something. Nothing that we have to do except fix the mind on the vibration, on the transcendental vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That's doable. Anyone can chant, and everyone has ears, everyone can hear and chant, but some practice is required there also, because after we begin chanting we find that the mind doesn't want to listen. It will find a way to chant but not hear. To chant, on the side, so that I can, like turn down the volume, the mental volume. I can go on thinking of whatever I want, and in the background he can chant Hare Krishna, but I'll be able to do my business. That's there, that we fix our mind on the sound of Hare Krishna, and pretty soon the mind is in New York City. wandering here and there. So, what to do? Krishna says, Yuto yuto nischalati manas chanchalam astiram tatastato niyam yaitad atmanyeva vashamnaye. The mind is, again, chanchala, restless, chanchalam, astiram, unsteady, and therefore we know it's going to go here and there. It's going to go wandering. So, yuto nischalati. Nischalati means the same thing, wandering. Yuto nischalati manas chanchalam astiram. Wherever that mind goes, tatastato, from wherever that is, niyam yaitad, atmanyeva vishamnayet. One has to bring it back, bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. This is practice in chanting. Chanting means with some discipline, some attention. The attention is important. That wherever the mind goes, we have to bring its attention back to Harinam. Not just like you're studying and the mind wanders. So then you know what you have to do. You have to bring your mind back and say, remember physics. You have to, you're studying, you have a test, you have to do this. So then the mind is, and then sometime later again the mind is wandering, it's already in the weekend. So then you have to bring it back again, no, we have some work to do. So this is discipline, self-discipline. And we have experience, it's possible, otherwise we wouldn't be able to live. We have the power to bring the mind, to focus the mind, and the chanting is the powerful means to focus the mind on Krishna. Savai mana Krishna padaravindeya. The goal is to fix the mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. The lotus feet of Krishna are not different from the holy name of Krishna. The holy name of Krishna is everything. Everything is there in the sound of Krishna's holy name. Krishna's form, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's everything are all there. Because abhinnatan nama namino, there's no difference between Krishna and Krishna's holy name. So the practice is simply to chant again and again. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Whenever there's a moment, we can chant Hare Krishna. The more we chant, the better. Chanting means thinking. You don't have to separately think of Krishna. As soon as you're chanting Hare Krishna, immediately Krishna is there. You simply have to chant and hear. And it's only a matter of realization. And, like any practice, if you stick to the practice, you'll get the result. Practice makes perfect. In the beginning, the practice seems like, how will I ever do this? Like a child who's learning to ride a bicycle, the whole program is falling. He's learning, but the learning is falling. Then maybe he gets frustrated and thinks, I don't really need to learn anyway. It's not. But if he sticks with it, then soon he's riding very nicely, he's very happy, he's going here, going there. It's simply a matter of practice. And again, in the beginning the practice may seem a little dry. I have to do this, I have to chant one round every day, that's my vow. And it takes so much concentration and it's very difficult. But if one sticks with it, then the result is it becomes very happy. It becomes very happy. One gets a taste for chanting. In the beginning it may seem dry, but as one realizes, Krishna is present in the sound of the mantra, so it becomes joyful, it becomes tasteful. Yes, it becomes tasteful. So the practice is there. The some effort from our side is needed. It's not so much effort as in the yoga system, impossible effort, but some persistent effort from our side will pay off in that the mind will be subdued. The problem is that right now, mind is so that it's forcing us. It's bossing us around, pushing us around. We have to obey the mind. Just like that man who came to our program last night, there was some person who was really practically a madman, although dressed, like a gentleman. He was practically a madman. His mind would not leave him alone. He was mad. And practically, most people are mad. Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yadindriya priti or apranoti. For sense gratification, they do the most foolish things. A simple example, in America, some years ago, there was a senator. Senator's like an MP here. So he was senator, he'd been a senator for 20 or 30 years or something like that, an older man from the middle of America, where people are kind of farmers and conservative people, and respectable man. And then it was found that the man was visiting some naked dance club to see one particular dancer, one naked dancer. And it was understood that he was not simply watching the performance, but afterwards they would go to some hotel and so on and so on and so on. So what was the result? Of course, he was publicly disgraced. He had to resign from the Senate. His career was finished. I don't know what, in his community and so on, where he'd been so respected, he was now derided and looked down upon. And for what? Just to have sex with a prostitute. And what is that sex? The same sex he could have with his wife. After all, sex is sex. There's not much difference. The product may be dressed differently, but it's the same product, really. Just like we have these two recorders here. So one may look a little better than the other, one has a fancier display or something like that. But finally you turn them on, they both record. You turn them on later, they both play. It's the same thing. So for the sake of sex enjoyment, which he could have had at home, he goes to a prostitute because in the mind, wow. And then he ruins his life. So is it crazy? Yes, it's crazy. Does it do it? Yes. Why? Because the mind is demanding. You gotta go, you gotta go, you gotta go, you gotta go. So that's explained here in the Katha Upanishad, that the senses are like the horses of the chariot, the mind is like the reins, then higher is the intelligence, who's the driver, and then we're the passenger. So if the passenger is directing the driver's got a good grip on the reins, the horses are going properly, you get to your destination. But if the driver's gone to sleep, he's dropped the reins, and the horses are going whichever way they want, what's going to happen? Or in the modern context, we don't do much with chariots these days, but if you have a car, so then you have your driver, and then you have your steering wheel. And then you have your, the machinery of the car, so that it goes where you want. Ever been in a car when the driver falls asleep? I've been. couple of times and narrowly survived to tell you the tale. You know, the driver, if the car takes over because no one's at the wheel, you're in perilous straits. You're in danger. So that's what it's like. When the mind is uncontrolled, it becomes one's worst enemy. When it's controlled, it's the best friend, but uncontrolled, it's the worst enemy. The car is going here and there, and you could be killed or injured at any moment. And that's what's going on. People's minds are uncontrolled. You know, they gamble, and pathological gamblers, they bet everything. You know, their last paycheck, their last everything, this, that, and they go mad, spend everything. Those who are unrestricted in sex, they, in so many ways, they risk their life. You know, they don't know what disease this person might be carrying. They don't know, and so many problems, what may be there. Intoxication, again, then they'll drink and they'll drive, which is basically suicidal. Or they'll drink and they'll not drive, which is still more or less suicidal. Animal killing, again, basically self-destructive. So for the sake of the mind, where the mind is saying, I want to eat this, I want to touch that, I want to see this, I want to... they're doing things that are self-destructive. What intelligent person does something self-destructive? Intelligent person does something which is self-preserving, self-constructive. But they're destroying themselves, destroying their environment, destroying their lives, because the senses are saying, So one has to control indriyani paranyahur indriyebhya param manaha. Manasastu para buddhir, yo buddhe paratastu saha. Higher than the senses is the mind. Higher than the mind is the intelligence. Higher than the intelligence is the soul. So it's meant to be that the soul controls the intelligence controls the mind controls the senses. Everything's properly ordered, and then our life is progressive. But if the senses drag the mind, and the mind figures out, the senses are dragging the mind, come on. Then the mind says, intelligence, we need a justification for this. We need a rationale why this is an intelligent thing to do, why this is responsible, why for the sake of my family or my community or my nation or for the sake of progress or the sake of health or for the sake of anything, why we're going to do this. Okay, you got the explanation, good, well, all right, let's go. Or the intelligence, we need a scheme, how we're going to do this. So the intelligence is now engaged in the service of the senses. Just like a cat. In America and Europe, people keep cats as pets. Here they're just, stray creatures. But in America, people think that it's nice to have this stray creature in their home. So when they keep the cat at home, the cats, of course, like to drink milk. So some milk is sitting on your table, and you're there in the kitchen. So what does the cat do? Jump up and take the milk? No, because then you'll chase the cat away. So the cat waits till you leave the kitchen, then jumps up and takes the milk. Well, how does he do that? Intelligence. He's intelligent. He thinks that when you leave, then I'll... But what is the intelligence doing? It's serving the senses. That's all. It's busy for eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So in modern human society, we have so much intelligence, but it's being used for sense gratification, for the business of the cats and dogs. They're making big plans and earning big degrees and doing big work and so many things for sense gratification. It means that their intelligence is being used for a progressive life of animal propensities. Polished animal life. So human life is not meant to be a polished animal. It's meant for advancement in spiritual understanding. It's meant for getting free from the miseries of material existence. It's meant for reviving our relationship with Krishna. And ultimately meant for going back home, back to Godhead. Well, that's all possible by chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Some questions? Questions? Yes. Loud. Mind is telling us to do something, and the intelligence is also telling us to do something. But it may not be good for us. How to know whether it's good or not? Yes, the intelligence unfortunately becomes like a prostitute to the mind. So the mind becomes unreliable. What is that? Indriyani manobuddhira syadhishtanam uchyate. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the problem, of course, is lust or material desire. And lust has taken up strategic positions in the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. So we're dealing with the enemy, and the enemy has grabbed hold of our intelligence. So I can't even trust my own intelligence anymore. It's like when they play with the computers, and now when you put in your data, you're getting back the wrong result because the enemy has carefully manipulated your programs. So now when you think that you're doing your accounts, you're really taking money out of your bank account and putting it into someone else's, or something of that nature. Or you've just destroyed your entire database because someone has monkeyed with your program. So the intelligence has been occupied by the enemy, and therefore it can't be trusted. And we see that. There are people who are exceedingly intelligent, so exceedingly intelligent that they screw up their whole lives. They find some sophistical justification for the most vile and vicious and, again, self-destructive behavior. They're destructive to themselves, destructive to others. And they'll have some sophisticated discourse about democracy and freedom and this and that and this and that, and really all they're doing is clubbing somebody over the head and inviting themselves to be clubbed over the head by the opposite party. And this is all with most, people with graduate degrees and Krishna says, Tasmat Shastra Pramanamte. Therefore one should be guided by Shastra. Not by the mind and not even by the intelligence. It's not that intelligence is to be thrown away any more than the mind or the senses are to be thrown away, but they're to be purified. They're to be purified. Intelligence also is not just meant to be a totally free agent doing anything and everything, because the intelligence will also get itself in trouble. It's not at the very top. At the top is the conscious living being himself, the soul himself, who's meant to use his intelligence. When he uses his intelligence, then the intelligence becomes very valuable. When the intelligence is using him on behalf of some other agent, then he's really got an enemy on his hands. So one should know what to do and what not to do from Shastra, from Vedic knowledge, from Vedic wisdom. From Shastra and from the spiritual master. the spiritual master explains, the Shastra says, yes, you should, it applies this way, it applies that way, you do this, you do that. And along with the spiritual master, the sadhus, the saintly devotees, who are experienced and advanced in Krishna consciousness, they give guidance. Yes, better that you do this, better that you not do that. This will be more favorable, this will be unfavorable. Then, guided by Shastra, tasmat Shastra pramanam te karya karya vyavastato, Shastra gatva vidhanoktam karma kartum iharasi. Knowing what Shastra is, one will know how to act properly. Just suppose in the state, one has to know the law. One has to know that I'm supposed to drive on the left in this country. I'm supposed to drive on the left. Not just that by my intelligence I say, well, I could drive this way, I could drive that way. One has to know, of course here they drive on all sides, but at least we know that the starting place is the left. Basically I drive on the left, and sometimes I drive this way and that way, but basically I'm on the left. Why? The intelligence could say, well, why not the right? Right or left, there's no real difference. I have a right hand, I have a left hand, they both look the same. There's no reason to ascribe more value to the right one than to the left one, or the left one to the right one. And it's simply an arbitrary convention that people are supposed to drive in the left. After all, in America they drive on the right, and everything works fine. So why this needless duality and distinction and restriction on our freedom that we have to drive on the left when I would like to drive on the right? And one constructs a whole thing. No, the intelligence is not just meant to go willy-nilly and consider all the different possibilities and do whatever. No. The law is there. You drive on the left, and then the intelligence is there. Yes, the law is to drive on the left, so it will be better if I drive on the left. So by getting proper direction. Even in practical affairs, our Father instructs us, you do this, even in basic things about how to live. So we take direction. Yes, the Father has taught me that you do this and do that. Simple, practical things. Before eating I should wash my hands. I could go through a whole intellectual consideration. Well, washing or not washing, and this and this. But my Father has taught me to wash my hands. I wash my hands. The Father is the authority. So one should know what to do and what not to do by following the authority. There are different authorities. The government is an authority. My parents are authorities. My teachers are authorities. There are so many different authorities, and the authorities will say different. Once we get into more complicated things than washing hands, authorities will say different things and so on. But the supreme authority is Krishna, and Krishna's directions are there in Shastra. Therefore, Krishna says we should follow the Shastra, even though the Shastra may disagree with my teachers, or may disagree with my parents, or may disagree with my friends, or may disagree with me. I think this, but the Shastra says that, and then I should go by Shastra. Then I'll get the right direction. Is that all right? Yeah. Question? Mm-hmm.
Maharaj, you said that the intelligence is controlled by the soul itself.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah, it should be controlled by the soul itself. But in the conditioned state, the soul is, in a dormant state.
Yeah, the soul is supposed to control the intelligence, but in the conditioned state, the soul is dormant. Dormant means not that he's asleep, but he's asleep to the real purpose of life. Soul means consciousness. I have to use my intelligence. So who is that I? Someone says, use your intelligence. And they're not talking to their intelligence. To your intelligence, they're talking to you. Who are you? Your soul. But now you're using your intelligence for some material purpose. That's practically like being asleep. You're using your intelligence for some dull purpose. But the same you can use your intelligence for spiritual realization. That's up to you. All right. Something else? Yes?
When we give this example of body, then often we give we give the example of car. It is also a dead matter, body. It becomes easy to relate, the car and driver body. When we talk of the mind, we often give example of like the monkey or the child. So in understanding it becomes a little difficult because it is represented by some living being. Like now also it is a mind.
Well, examples are imperfect. We may represent a car by the body by a car, or we may represent the mind by a monkey, or we may represent anything by anything. These are just examples. It's not that because the body is compared to a car, it has 4 wheels and a Maruti sticker on the back. It's an example.
Yeah, but it appears that the mind is alive, and mind is a dead matter.
Appears that the body's alive too.
Because very difficult to understand because mind, we say the mind says this, but then actually the mind is separate person who says or the soul is responsible for it.
It just takes analysis. It seems that the body is the self. It appears that the body is alive. It seems that this body is me. But when you analyze it, you see, well, it's mechanical. It's a machine. And I tell it what to do. When I tell my hand to raise up, it raises up. When I tell it, okay, go down, it goes down. If I lose a hand, I'm still me. If they do a heart transplant, I'm still the same person, even though I lost my heart. So the physical body, or I had a child's body, that body is gone. I have a young man's body, that body will be gone. I get an old man's body, now that body is going to be gone. Anyone can understand that the body is changing, but I'm the same person. So in this way, one understands that the body is finally, as Krishna says, yantra. It's a machine. And then the mind is more subtle. But what is the mind doing? It's accepting and rejecting. If you analyze the mind, the functions of the mind, basic function is sankalpa, vikalpa, accepting and rejecting. You go to the electronics store, you say, I think I'd like to have this MP3 player. No, I don't think I like this one so much. I think I'd rather have the other one. Actually, I don't think I don't need one anyway, but no, it would be nice to have one. But, I don't know, well, maybe. So like what do they call those switches that have 2 positions? Yeah, flip-flop switch or... A toggle switch, toggle switch, this way, that way, this way, that way, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. 1 0 1 0 1 0 1 0. That's the mind. So like the toggle switch, it's just mechanical. This way, this way, this way, this way, this way. It gets pulled. All right, this way. It gets pulled the other. Pull. Mind is going. Now, what's the function of the intelligence? The intelligence is the analytical machinery. Why should I purchase this? What will it do for me? Can I afford it? Will it last? Is it the best, most suitable one on the market for my purposes? You analyze, you compare it to 3 or 4 others. You give your reasons. Mind doesn't bother with reasons. The mind bothers with, I like it, I don't like it, I like it, I don't like it. I like her, I don't like her, I like her, I don't like her. But intelligence analyzes. What will be the benefit? What will be the loss? And finally, on the basis of intelligence, you can make a firm decision. If you stick with the mind, you make a decision one moment and you make the next decision the next. Reverse it. But intelligence, now that you've analyzed, you can make a decision. But that again is a mechanical process. You could represent that computationally. And who is it that's making this decision? Who else? Who is it that tells the intelligence? We have a decision to make here. We have to perform an analysis of this problem and arrive at a proper solution. Who is it that's using the intelligence? That's the person. I say, I need to use my intelligence, or you say, my intelligence isn't working today. Or who is that I who's using the intelligence? That's soul. Yeah.
Actually, Sudama comes to Krishna. Sudama. So there was a story that Sudama, he had some of the rice or something to eat. And when there was so much of rain and all, and Krishna was with him, and he didn't give to Krishna all those rice or eatable things. He only had those things. And for those bad things, he was suffering all through his life unless he visited Krishna at his home Dwaraka.
Gee, I don't know where you got this story. It's where? From you? No, I think we have the story a little mixed up. Huh? Krishna, Sudama was a Brahmin. He was a class friend of Krishna. He was very poor, but he just didn't have very much. So his wife was nagging him, actually, that, come on, Krishna's your friend, now he's the big king in Dwarka, and you're living in poverty, but Krishna's your friend, if you go to him, certainly he'll give you something. So why don't you go to Dwarka? 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 Why don't you see Krishna? Why don't you ask Krishna for something? Finally, he said, all right, I'll go to Dwarka. Actually, he wasn't so interested in asking for anything, but he thought, I'll see Krishna, that will be nice. So because he was going to see Krishna, he wanted to bring some present for his friend, but he practically didn't have anything. So his wife, I think, borrowed, or just begged up, just got some chipped rice, some poa. Most, simple grade of rice, and packed up a little bit in his, a little guttery or something, and there he's off to Dwarka. So then he went to Dwarka. He saw Krishna. He had such a nice time with Krishna. And Krishna said, "I think you've brought me something." And Sudama was embarrassed that Krishna's the king of Dwarka, and I brought a little poa. What is this? So he was, wasn't coming forward. But Krishna, no, I think you've brought something. Let me see. Then he's snatching that poa. Then Sudama's thinking, this is not fit, but he's snatching it, and he takes a mouthful, another mouthful. Oh. Then Rukmini stopped. Don't take more. You'll be too indebted. He's so much your devotee. We're already indebted. Practically, we can't pay him back. If you take another mouthful, we're finished. So then, after some time, Sudama went back home. He thought, I'm not going to ask Krishna for anything. Whatever my wife, I'm not going to do that. So he just started back home. But then when he got back home, he saw that his home had been transformed into a palace. His wife now was all gorgeous and dressed up nicely, and there were servants there, and there was he was like transformed into Vaikuntha. So he understood that Krishna is so kind that even though I didn't ask him for anything, he's provided all of this. And that's how the story appears in Srimad Bhagavatam.
But before that, probably he was suffering quite a lot.
Yeah.
So, what was the cause of suffering? He was not asking for all these opulences, or Krishna wasn't,
And by the nature of the material world, there's sometimes one may be prosperous and sometimes poor. Actually, he wasn't suffering because he was Krishna conscious. He was a Brahmin. Brahmin doesn't need very much. He's philosophical. A a merchant or somebody, he's always thinking of profit. If he doesn't get profit, he's in anxiety. Brahmin, whatever comes, that's all right. He's philosophical. He's not very worried about that. His mind is in philosophy. So Sudama was a Brahmin. He wasn't very disturbed about not having a lot to eat, being poor. Just like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had one devotee, Kolaveja Sridhar, and he had just a little poor hut, and it was leaking also. But he thought, anyway, why bother to fix it? This is, it's okay. So Sudama was like that. He was philosophical. Doesn't matter, whatever I get. His wife was pushing a little, look how we're living.
There were times when Sudama didn't eat because he used to go to only 5 homes or 6 homes as his rule was. I mean, he used to beg only to the 5 homes. Means every day for 5 homes he go.
That I don't know. 5, 6, 2, whatever.
And I mean, if he is not getting from those 5 homes anything, I mean, he would have to stay all night or all day without having anything.
Yeah, that's the culture. There's some people, they'll just beg 4 or 5 homes. Some, they'll just won't beg at all. Whatever comes, that's okay. If nothing comes, that's it. Well, that may be there like that. But then, because he's philosophical, all right, we didn't get anything.
But he's so much of great devotee and still, he's suffering so much in this life.
It's not suffering. A person who's a philosopher doesn't suffer the same way. The materialistic person thinks, I'm this body, I didn't get enough food, the food wasn't good enough. I had to eat that low-class food, and there were no pakoras, and there was no kheer at the end, and there was no this, and there was no that, and I got better over here, and never. If you give him everything, the whole world, he won't be satisfied. You give him the whole world, he won't be satisfied. And a Brahmin, even if he doesn't get anything, he'll be satisfied. That's the difference. The Brahmin's mind is peaceful. So, I didn't eat today. Just like sometimes we voluntarily fast. On the Ekadashi day or Janmashtami day, we may fast. Do we die? No. Actually, it's kind of nice. Every day we have to spend so much time eating and digesting and all of that. We get a break for a day. Rather nice. So, but the materialistic person, how could you fast for a whole day? I could never do that. But if you decide to fast, it's not very difficult. Go for a day without food, take a break. Or some people, they can't go a day without sex. And there are other people who go with their whole life without sex and they'll feel better. Well, so much of it is the mind. So Sudama wasn't suffering because he was a philosopher. Only it appeared that he was poor, that he didn't have enough, this, that. But it was Krishna's arrangement also, pastime, just to illustrate that you can go from this to this by Krishna's grace. Mm-hmm. When the soul is in transition, excuse me? Does it possess a mind? Yes. When the soul travels from one body to the next at the time of death, it takes the mind with it. That's mentioned in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. That as the wind picks up different aromas, it travels over a rose garden, it smells like roses. It travels over a trash heap, it smells like trash. So the mind is picking up different impressions. And around those impressions, it gathers a set of senses. A certain kind of nose, a certain kind of ear, a certain kind of tongue, a certain kind of eye. In other words, the body itself is formed on the basis of the mind. So he has the mind of a vulture, he gets the body of a vulture. He has the mind of a human being, he gets the body of a human being.
What are the impressions would the soul undergo?
What kind of impressions does the soul pick up? That's up to him. You can see, practically speaking. I mean, just look at the way people are dressed, and you can tell what's on their mind. A guy's cutting a profile like he's, Bollywood star or something. You can understand what's in his mind. Or someone else is, dressed like a scholar and a professor and something. You can understand what's on his mind. So, just by seeing. In the Srimad Bhagavatam it said that you can see the modes of nature that a person has acquired just the way you can see the flags on a chariot. The warriors used to have certain flags so you could see who's who. So you see a person and you can see the flags. Passion. He's got his sunglasses, he's got his New York City jeans, he's got his If someone else, you see the bottle of Kingfisher in his hand, and you can understand, ignorance. And someone else, goodness. So you can understand what kind of impressions they're cultivating in the mind, what kind of impressions are dominant in the mind. So chanting Hare Krishna means to keep Krishna in the mind. So at the time of death, you're thinking of Krishna, you go back to Krishna. Get a spiritual body. Excuse me?
In that state, in this transition period, isn't there is this sort of battle between the mind and intelligence?
A battle between the mind and intelligence? There doesn't have to be. If your mind is, by intelligence you think, let me think of Krishna. The mind is trained by the intelligence, so it also thinks of Krishna. So it doesn't have to be a battle. It's everything. Like riding a horse, it's a battle between the man and the horse. But when the horse is tamed, it's not a battle. The horse cooperates. The mind becomes the friend.
Maharaj, some impersonalists, those who chant, suppose on some Om or something, will they not get perception because Om is also...
What will they get?
Means, because Om is not different from Krishna.
Om is not different from Krishna, but what are they thinking of? I am a drop, I'll become the ocean. They want to merge with Krishna. So they're thinking of the Supreme, but in the impersonal aspect. So they may be absorbed into the impersonal aspect. They're also transcendentalists, but they go to that feature of transcendence, the impersonal feature, where there's no form, no name, no qualities, no activities, no individuality, no nothing. So that's an unconstitutional position. The soul is by nature individual. The soul wants enjoyment. So here we want material enjoyment. That's the problem. But the answer to material enjoyment is not no enjoyment, it's spiritual enjoyment. The answer to material individuality is not no individuality, it's purified individuality. So they don't understand that, so they don't go to the status of purified individuality. They go to the status of obliterated individuality, or individuality held in check. So they go to the impersonal feature.
And so when we also chant, we also don't, we are told that we should not think of any form of Lord or something like that.
Not that you drive it out, but the goal is the personality of Godhead. And therefore you're chanting specifically Krishna's name. Krishna means Krishna, the person. They're chanting Om specifically because it's the impersonal representation of the Supreme. Om is not personal in their conception. So whatever the Supreme is, let me be one with the Supreme. That's their idea. That's their goal. Who, where? Loud.
I want to discuss further what I was questioning earlier.
Hmm?
So, as you that's when, like, when you're in the transition period, you can still focus on Krishna. Like,
What? Then when you're in the
in
trend,
the transition period, you can focus on Krishna.
yes,
Suppose you're conditioned. Suppose you want pure.
yes. The practice is how to think of Krishna at the time of death. If you practice nicely, you'll succeed. Let's say you don't succeed. Then you have to come back. But even if you come back, whatever progress you made is permanent. Materially, whatever progress you make is lost at the time of death. You were a scholar, you were a PhD, you were a millionaire. It's all lost. You come back as a baby, you come back as a dog, you don't come back with all your assets. But spiritually, Krishna says, whatever progress you made, pratyavayo navijite, it's never lost. So you pick up from where you left off. Therefore someone's naturally attracted to Krishna consciousness. Because in his previous life he cultivated that. Now he's picking it up from where he left off. So finally, in the next lifetime or the one after that, he makes more progress, till he reaches the goal. There's no loss there. Better to do it in one lifetime. But even if he doesn't finish it in one, he gets to finish it after that. Yes?
You said that the people who chant on Om, they are actually chanting an universal form of the Lord.
Generally.
Even Shiva chants on Om.
Shiva, he may chant Om, but he chants the holy name of Sankarshan. It's said in Srimad Bhagavatam, who's the personality of Godhead. Maybe in the movies he chants Om.
Sometimes we have two choices. One is given by our mind and one given by the super soul. And both seeming good. How to differentiate?
Therefore we have to see from Shastra. The super soul is saying one thing, mind is saying another. You have to look at what the mind's saying and see if it matches what the Shastra says. We don't know, is this message coming from super soul or is it coming from the mind? So, because it's internal, it's subjective, it's not clear. But Shastra is objective, you can look and see. Mind is saying, there's whatever it is. There's this beautiful girl, I should maybe ask her her name and where she's from. So the mind says, come on, don't miss the opportunity. But Shastra says, why are you mixing with this girl? Huh? So by Shastra you can tell. And because the super soul our reception is not so clear, therefore the super soul is externally represented by the spiritual master. We can ask the spiritual master, should I do this? The spiritual master, the Shastra, the devotees, they'll guide us. They'll help us take direction from the super soul.
I had one more question. I heard that sometimes Krishna takes tests to check the level of purity of devotee.
Maybe.
And then how to know in difficult situation, is it a test taken by Krishna or just difficult situation? Or is it
The difficult situation is always a test given by Krishna. Even if it's given by Maya, Maya is Krishna's agent. Yes.
The thing is that if you have someone, who, when he instructs you or suggests you something, then you keep your mind aside and just stick to his instructions. So, that's a possible way in which, you're not much confused about mind and intelligence. You know that when this person is speaking, he's my well-wisher, I'll keep my mind aside and just follow.
That's intelligence.
I'm talking about, a person with whom you are sharing a relation.
I understand that. So that's intelligence. When you take direction from someone who knows more than you, that's intelligent.
So my question is like, in which mood, you select a person whom you think that he is appropriate?
You have to see from Shastra who's the appropriate person. So you want to buy diamonds, you have to know what a diamond is. Otherwise you'll wind up in the glass department. So from Shastra one can know the qualities of a bona fide spiritual master. Yes.
The real world, like the soul is having mind intelligence, is positive, only three better than mind, better material.
A little louder. In the material world, the mind is having what?
Three elements, the mind, intelligence, and positive,
Yes.
which are material.
Yes.
So when we go in spiritual world, so there also are we having mind, intelligence, and positive?
No, you have mind, intelligence, and real ego in the spiritual world.
There the mind is personal or like
Personal.
it is separate person than the soul.
No, it's the same. Here, there's a difference between the mind and between body and soul. In the spiritual world, there's no difference. There's no difference. Here we expand ourselves in terms of the material energy. I'm soul, but I expand myself in this body by borrowing from the material energy. Through hydrogen and potassium and nitrogen and protein and all of that. So I'm expanded in a body made of matter. Or, there's a little small man, but he's driving a big car. So he's expanded himself in terms of the material energy. But the car and the person are different, or the body and the person are different. In the spiritual world, we may take a certain form also, but that form is made of the same thing that we're made of. It's made of the spiritual energy. So the mind, the body, they're there, intelligence in the spiritual world, but they're not different from the soul. They're the same as the soul. The duality is not there. Yeah.
Means Maharaj, we say that we are originated from Krishna only. And initially we were originated in the
Oh, you're not going to figure this one out. If we were originally in the spiritual world, how did we come to the material world and so on?
No. The thing is,
A different one, okay.
the concept of origination comes when there is time.
No. Your concept of origination comes when there's time.
Yeah.
But there's origin without time also. In the spiritual world, Krishna is the source and we're the emanation, but time doesn't figure into it. We can't figure that out because we have no experience of anything beyond time.
But the question of, the birth and death comes when there is time.
Right, but origin, birth and death comes when there's time. In the spiritual world, there's no birth and death, and still Krishna is the origin.
But how would it be possible?
Just like the sun, we have experience that sunlight comes and goes. But the sun and the sunlight are permanently connected. There's no difference between the sun and the sunlight. We say the sun is in my room because the sunlight is there. You can't imagine the sun without the sunlight, or the sunlight without the sun. So they're one substance. And you can't imagine that, first the sun didn't have any sunlight, and then it had sunlight. That also you can't imagine. So they're integral, you can't sever them. And still, we'll all recognize that the sun is the source, and the sunlight is the emanation. So it's something like that. We're out of time, aren't we? We can go till 8:45? Okay.
It's very difficult to control our mind with the advancement of scientific research and this, that, and new technologies are there. But there is one more thing that overcomes the mind and intelligence, that is emotions. But how can we control our emotions? Because it comes on the way of intelligence and mind.
Yeah, really the question is, how do you control lust? Among the emotions, that's the troublesome one.
Yes.
And we can add to it anger. That's trouble number 2. When lust is frustrated, then we become angry. So it's a fact. We become irrational because of the emotions. The intelligence is there, but the emotions overcome the intelligence. Therefore, everything has to be directed to Krishna. Emotion also. I'm in trouble because my emotions are attracted to a prostitute or a respectable girl or a this or a that, or they're attracted to somebody else's MP3 recorder that I'm about to put in my pocket, or whatever. So one has to control the emotions by spiritual intelligence. The intelligence may get overwhelmed by the emotions. Therefore one has to have spiritual strength by which to fortify the intelligence. By spiritual strength. Not only spiritual strength, but spiritual taste. Just like Haridas Thakur, he was a great devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and as a young man he was chanting. He had a little hut, he was chanting someplace, and he was getting a reputation as a big sadhu, a very great devotee. And there was some man who was very envious of him. So the man thought, I'll fix him, I'll hire a beautiful prostitute, send her in the middle of the night, and I'll have some people there to discover them, and that'll be that for his reputation. I'll finish him off. So he called together the local girls and said, I'm looking for somebody, I've got a job for somebody. So there was one girl, very beautiful, very young, volunteered. So she came in the middle of the night and came to his door and offered her dandavats, offered her pranams, and said that, oh, Haridas Thakur, you're so young, you're so handsome, you're such a great devotee. My heart is burning for you. I can't live without you. Please be merciful to me, be kind to me. Okay, young girl's offering herself in the middle of the night, and she's sitting there in the hut. He said, it's a nice proposal. I've taken a vow to chant Hare Krishna so many times, and I haven't finished my chanting yet tonight, so please sit down and I'll finish my chanting and then we can enjoy. So she sat down and he's chanting, but somehow the rooster crows, the morning comes, and he said, I'm sorry, I didn't finish my chanting. But if you come back tomorrow, then... So she showed up again in the evening. Again he's chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Again, please sit down, I'll finish my chanting, all right. Again, morning comes. He said, I've taken a vow to chant so many mantras in the month, and I've just about reached the end of the vow, so if you come back tomorrow night. So she came back the third night, he's chanting, and she's also hearing now for 3 days while he's chanting the whole night, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. She starts chanting Hare Krishna, and then she realizes, she confesses that this is the actual situation. I was hired by some guy to make you fall down. Please forgive me. He said, I figured the whole story. I was actually going to leave 3 days ago, but I stayed 3 extra days for your benefit. Here, I'm leaving. You take this hut, chant Hare Krishna. And he went on. So how was he able to withstand such an offer? It's because he was getting a better taste. We see some beautiful girl and we think, well, wow, I could. But you see some ugly girl, you're not attracted. So from the point of view of the self-realized soul, there's no attraction at all. What is this? It's some blood and some flesh and little hair stuck on and some eyebrows moving up and down. What is this? I'm going to go for that. Why? Because he's got a higher taste. In the beginning, we're just chanting because we know that it's a good thing to do and it's recommended in the literature. But those who are advanced in chanting, they're relishing nectar at every moment. So the offer even of the greatest enjoyment in the material world is just not attractive to them. So those inferior emotions are overwhelmed by a superior feeling of love for Krishna. Otherwise, in the beginning stages, still one has to use one's intelligence, remember the instructions of the spiritual master, be careful about, how we live and so on, so that we don't get into difficult situations. But the more we chant, the more we'll experience that. What was this thing that I was attracted to? Okay. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so strict with Junior Haridas, so what is the hope for us? Yes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that he was hard like the thunderbolt and soft like the rose. Junior Haridas, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was strict with him because he'd accepted the vow of sannyas. When sannyasis are supposed to be strict. And especially in those days, the rules were very strict. Still, sannyasi should be strict. So when he saw that Junior Haridas was not being strict, then he made an example. Otherwise, he had many other devotees. What to speak of strict? Some of them were married. Many of them were married. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't say, you're associating with a woman? No, fine, you're married. One devotee, his wife was pregnant, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the child an auspicious name. He wasn't displeased. It was fine. Prabhupada said that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu disapproved of drinking water underwater while taking a bath on a fast day. Drinking water underwater. One takes a bath, one's taken a vow that today I'm going to fast, I'm not even going to drink water, I'm going to strictly, complete fast. But then when he goes to take his bath in the river, while he's under the water, he drinks. Where no one will see, So that's cheating. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't approve of cheating. But honestly, that's fine. You be what you are. One may be householder, one may be brahmachari, sannyasi, whatever. But don't cheat. That was his point. Now we're out of time, or should we take another question? Tell me what to do. One last question.
Swamiji, many people have experienced near-death experience during operation. So it is said that soul hovers over the body. So many people remember that they are being operated, but they were painless. But still during operation, when the soul was hovering around over the body, the heart was functioning and the body was working, but the still soul was outside the body. How is it possible?
Yes, because it's subtle. Sukshma tad vigyaya. The soul is described as sukshma, very subtle. So it's not like the usual material thing. There's so many things. You're in the realm basically of parapsychology, of things that are unusual psychological effects that are not supposed to happen according to the strict rules. Someone hovering over his body and looking down on the operation, that's not supposed to happen. But there are such things. To give you another example, there are what they call poltergeist incidents, where poltergeist means playful ghost. It's not actually a ghost, but they'll see that like in the house, things will start flying around. Radio will turn on and off with no one turning it on and off. Boxes will fall. Electrical appliances will start working. Things will appear out of nowhere. Weird things going on. And I knew of one case of one of our congregation had such an experience. And what it is actually, it's almost invariably involves some disturbed adolescent. And what happens is that the mind becomes disturbed and it creates disturbances in the environment. Just as with epilepsy, there's some neurological disturbance and it disturbs the whole body. So in poltergeist cases, it goes beyond the body and affects the environment. And there are well-documented cases like that. So how is it possible? It's supposed to be, according to the laws of physics, that unless you touch something or push something, it doesn't move. But here, just by some effect of the mind, the thing is moving. And I could tell you many other different things from parapsychology, where just by the mind these things are happening. So the mind is not it's not like the gross thing. If I want to move this microphone, I touch it, and by mechanical process, the microphone moves. But the yogis, they can move the microphone without touching it. So it means the mind is a more subtle thing. You can't just calculate it according to the normal physical equations. So the mind also, even when the heart's not beating, there are such cases where the heart is dead and even brain is dead. There are documented cases like that. And still the person is recalling later, when the heart and brain are revived, that they were doing this and they were doing that, and I was looking at it and this and that. Because the soul is subtle.
So, Swamiji, mind is so powerful that it's inside the body and it can affect the outside systems. Okay, and when it's outside the body, still it can affect the body systems. So, if it is so powerful that yogis, when they have control over mind, then they can do anything they want. But similar way, now we cannot perform yoga because this is a Kali Yuga. So we are chanting for controlling mind. So to what extent it can be controlled so that we can have control over mind so much that we can do anything we want?
Not very much. To do that sort of thing, you have to have do a lot of tapasya. You have to learn all these very subtle things. Yogis could do it. They could create a planet. They could do so many things. In the Kali Yuga, that kind of mental power we will not develop. Maybe some rare person, but we can't expect to develop that. If we can simply think of Krishna and be Krishna conscious, that is the perfection of our mental development, intellectual development. Apart from that, actually, these abilities, mystic powers, the power to create a planet, to bring anything from any part of the universe just by desiring, all of these things, they're a distraction. These things that seem so attractive, if I could do anything I want with my mind, these are the things that hold yogis back. The yogi is held back in the material world, being enchanted by, I could do this, I could do that, I could have this power, I could have that power. Only when the yogi makes further progress and leaves behind the desire for such powers does he actually attain perfection. So we're looking beyond material achievements, material powers. We're looking to achieve the highest perfection by chanting Hare Krishna. Do we stop here? We do. Okay. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.